everybody. I'll apologize in advance for my voice. I'm speaking quietly because my baby's sleeping in the next room. I'm just making this video to give you some insight into my workflow for creating curricula using backwards design from the BC curriculum. So I'll walk you through how I created one of the units for the writing curriculum, beginning with just the BC curriculum and an empty Word document, and ending up with the UBD design template filled in for the unit. So here we go. It is a bit of a daunting task to consider making an entire curriculum when you're just looking at the standards. So I put this quote on here because I think it's good to keep in mind. It is kind of disgusting as well. If you approach this step by step, I think that you won't find it difficult at all, and you'll see that creating this writing curriculum at least is a very attainable goal. So the first thing that I did when I was creating this is I took a look at the BC curriculum website, and I read through the language arts section, and I made a list on a scratch pad of some of the different standards that I thought I would be able to address in the writing curriculum. I thought about the amount of time that I had to teach writing in the year. I would be doing about 2 classes a week. And I just tried to think of some different unit topics that I might be able to use that would address the standards that I was seeing. This was all very informal. I put it on a scratch pad. I made a chart on the Word document. I chose to do 8 units for 8 months. I know that we teach for 10 months, but I thought with some of the different school events that occur, 8 would be a more reasonable amount to try to approach throughout the year. We'll skip ahead. Then, onto my document that I opened, I looked at the BC curriculum website, and I found in those circles at the top of the page the big ideas that I thought I could address in my writing curriculum. For me, it was that language and text can be a source of creativity and joy, and using language in creative and playful ways helps us to understand how language works. I later on added another big idea of my own for the unit that you'll see coming up, but I just wanted to take as much as I could from the website to look at and to work with as I moved forwards. Next, from the BC curriculum, I copied and pasted general content that I thought that my writing curriculum would address across most of the units. For example, there are different forms of text that we would be writing. That would be an idea or a theme that would go across the entire writing curriculum. Reflecting and thinking about learning, self-evaluating would be something that I would be doing in every single unit. The writing process, revising, editing, peer editing. This is a process that I intend to follow throughout the year, regardless of what we're working on, writing, revising, publishing. During our discussion on grammar the other day, it was decided that 5th grade would focus on writing purposeful paragraphs. Some grammar points that I would address. So I just listed all of these. These would be things that most of the units would be assessing and addressing. I repeated the process for competencies. In terms of responding to text, I intend to have the kids comment on one another's blogs. In terms of organizing into paragraphs, that's something that I would be addressing quite often. Writing and design processes, planning, drafting, editing, again with the writing process. I just took all of this stuff from the BC website and just copied it and pasted it into this document just to have it somewhere that I could work with it. Again, this is a very rough process, and it's just from 0 to hero, so this is intermittent steps. After that, I decided to tackle one of my units, so I chose Unit 1, the personal narrative, because I thought it was fairly basic and easy to begin with. I created a new big idea that I thought my kids would relate to. We can use language and writing to share our feelings and memories. I think it's a pretty basic human need to communicate, and I thought that the students might connect with that. I then went back up to the top of my page with all of the general curricular content and competencies, and I copied and pasted all of the different general standards that I thought I would be addressing. Again, this is a straight copy and paste from what was already on the page. And then I looked back at the BC website to see if there were any specific standards that I would just be addressing in the personal narrative unit. I didn't find any. However, one of the topics that I will teach in a different unit will be poetry, and I know during that unit I'll be able to address standards that are present in the BC curriculum that relate to literary devices, similes, metaphors, and various other things. The research unit that I intend to do will certainly have some different research skills involved that I'll be able to assess the students on. So in those situations, I would be adding some different unit-specific curricular content. In this case, I didn't have to. Next, and I think this is the most important step, or a very important step, was to simplify and unpack the standards. And by this I mean to rewrite the standards to more accurately reflect what you intend to have the students learn and the tasks that you intend to have them carry out in that unit. It's often recommended that if you're unsure of what to do, you might find the nouns and the verbs. Now, I don't recall actually doing that throughout this process, but I'll kind of show you what I did. If I flip back to the other one, you can see under curricular content general, it says forms, functions, genres of text. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically a bunch of bullets that don't make any sense. So what I did is I took that and I said, okay, so what does it mean? Well, in this unit, they're going to understand the purpose and features of personal narratives. So that's my genre, that's my style. Another one, the second one, metacognitive strategies. Thinking about learning metacognition, blah, blah, blah. I simplified that to, I expect my students to self-assess and reflect on the process of writing the personal narrative. That's it. Okay, and I did that for all of the general content and competencies. I just read it and I thought to myself, what about that standard am I actually going to address? What are the students actually going to do in this unit regarding that particular standard? So there they are. Almost done. And once you have this, you should be really getting a picture in your mind of what you're going to be teaching and what you're going to be doing. I carried all that forward to the Understanding by Design unit plan template. You should recognize this from our last meeting, the meeting prior to the last one. So what I did is I took all of those unpacked standards and I stuck them in the established goals section just to have at the top of the page, because I know that these are the things that I need to do to meet the standards in the British Columbia curriculum with this unit. I filled in some of the things at the top of the page. I made this unit title My Life Story, which is slightly cheesy, so subject to change. I then used these standards to fill in the various sections, the understandings, the essential questions, what the students will know, and what they'll be able to do. Then I create a performance task, which in writing is not that hard, because they're most likely going to create a piece of writing that would allow them to meet these standards. I thought about some other evidence. I'm going to give them a verb tense quiz just to make sure that they understand some of the things that I'll go over. During our workshop, the writing workshop, I'll be able to formatively assess their work as they go. And then finally, I tried to choose some different learning activities to work through the process. So I'm going to read them an example of a personal narrative. I'll make sure to describe our lesson objectives throughout the way. We'll analyze a personal narrative in terms of tailoring and differentiating. They'll be able to choose their own topic to write about, so they'll be differentiating by interest. The process itself will allow them to revise and reflect. And so I have here my finalized UBD unit plan. I'll add more to this, I'm pretty sure, as time passes. But this is going to get me through my month of, 2 periods a week. So what do you do now? You repeat that for me, 7 more times until the writing curriculum's done. That process took me, I would say, like an hour or two. However, now that I have all those general standards laid out for myself, it's just a lot of cutting and pasting and changing a few words. And now that I have an idea of how my writing lessons are going to play out, I can sort of reuse that and kind of build off that and riff off that for the different units that I'll be creating. So I hope that helped you a bit. I'm going to sign off now. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thank you very much for listening.